He handed her a meal out of kindness, but when he saw the look in her eyes, he realized this woman had once fed him when he had nothing. Kabir Thakur, the 38-year-old CEO of a multi-million-dollar food delivery empire, was known for being sharp, relentless, and deeply private. His company slogan was painted on billboards across the country: "No one deserves to go hungry." To the world, it was just branding. To Kabir, it was personal. One rainy evening, stuck in traffic, his car passed by an alley where a few homeless people huddled under thin plastic sheets. Most were curled up, hungry, invisible to the city around them. But one woman stood out. She wasn't begging. She wasn't even asking. She simply sat, holding a piece of torn cloth around her shoulders, eyes downcast, as if the world had long stopped looking her way. Something tugged at Kabir. Against his schedule, against his habit, he told the driver to pull over. He stepped out into the rain, approached her quietly, and offered her a warm meal box from the back seat, part of his company's daily surplus that he kept for charity drops. She looked up. Their eyes met. And for a second, just a second, something cracked inside him. Her eyes, they weren't unfamiliar. That face, though older, tired, worn by life, stirred something deep in his memory. She took the food slowly, hands trembling. "Thank you, Beta," she said gently, voice cracked but kind. Beta. That word, only one woman had ever called him that with such tenderness. And then, like a jolt, it hit him. This wasn't just a stranger. He knew her. But from where? And why did his heart feel like it was recognizing someone he never thought he'd see again? Kabir stood frozen in the rain, his mind spinning. The woman continued eating slowly, savoring every bite like it was her first real meal in days. She didn't seem to recognize him. But how could she? Time had changed him. But Kabir couldn't unsee what was suddenly clear. He sat down on the curb beside her, ignoring the wet pavement and the stares from people walking by. "Ma'am, do you know me?" he asked softly. She looked at him curiously, lips parting slightly. "No, Beta, but thank you for the food. You reminded me of someone I once knew." He forced a smile. "Someone like who?" She looked into the distance, her voice faint. "Years ago, I used to cook at a boys' hostel. Small kitchen, big pots. Most kids were noisy and wild, but one boy, he was always quiet, always hungry but too proud to ask for seconds." Kabir's heart skipped. "I used to leave an extra roti near his plate, pretend it was a mistake." She smiled gently. "He reminded me of my own son. Lost him when he was little." His throat tightened. "Do you remember his name?" She paused, thinking. "Kabir, I think. Sweet boy. Never talked much, but always helped me carry the rice sacks." Kabir couldn't hold back the tears. It was her. He remembered now how, in the hardest years of his childhood, when his parents abandoned him and the world turned cold, there was one warm place. The kitchen. She had been the silent angel who fed him when no one else did. When he cried in his room, too ashamed to admit he was hungry, she'd leave food outside his door. And now, she was on the street, alone, forgotten. He turned to her, voice shaking. "Auntie, I'm that boy. I'm Kabir." She stopped chewing. Her eyes widened, and then her hand flew to her mouth as tears spilled down her cheeks. "No, it can't be." But it was. He gently held her hand. "You fed me when I had no one. And now I'm never letting you go hungry again." The next morning, headlines buzzed across the internet. CEO of India's top food startup seen feeding a homeless woman on the street. She fed me first. Kabir Thakur's tearful reunion with childhood kitchen auntie. But Kabir didn't care about the coverage. He had already made up his mind. That very night, he returned to the same spot, not with security, not with photographers, but with a doctor, warm clothes, and a small handwritten note that read, "Come home, Auntie. I owe you more than food. I owe you my life." Her name was Shanta Devi, and she had spent the last 10 years drifting from one temple gate to another after the hostel kitchen was shut down and the management changed. No pension, no farewell. Just silence and survival. Kabir brought her to his home, not out of pity, but love. He gave her the guest room, redecorated it with soft orange bed sheets, her favorite color, stocked the kitchen with ingredients she once used, and most of all, he made her feel needed again. "I don't want you to rest," he said, smiling. "I want you to teach Ishan," his adopted son, how to make real food. Shanta chuckled through tears. "You always hated Karela." He laughed. "And you always made it taste like magic." But the story didn't end there. Kabir announced a new program through his company called the First Plate Initiative, a mission to track down and honor the unsung kitchen workers, canteen aunties, and cooks who had fed thousands of forgotten students across the nation. Every year, one would receive a home, health care, and dignity. Because as Kabir said in his speech, "Every child who eats becomes someone, because someone like Shanta Ma fed them first." Months later, the walls of Kabir's mansion echoed with the comforting clinks of spoons and the warmth of home-cooked meals. But more than that, it echoed with laughter. The kind of laughter Kabir hadn't known since his childhood. Shanta Ma became more than just a guest. She became family. She packed Kabir's lunch herself, sat beside him during meetings, sometimes giving unsolicited advice. "These men in suits talk too much," she'd whisper. And at night, she told bedtime stories to Ishan, her wrinkled fingers brushing back his hair like she used to do for Kabir decades ago. Then came the day the world watched. Kabir stood on stage at the National Entrepreneurship Summit. The hall was filled with CEOs, investors, and reporters. But instead of launching a new product, he turned the mic toward someone else. He called Shanta Ma up in front of everyone. Dressed in a simple sari, her hands still folded nervously, she looked out over the crowd. And Kabir said, "Behind every so-called self-made man is someone who stayed hungry so he wouldn't have to. I call her Auntie. You can call her what she truly is, a quiet hero. Today I want the world to know that I am not the founder of this company. She is." The crowd gave her a standing ovation. Tears streamed down her face as she held his hand. And in that moment, the world saw what Kabir had known all along. Sometimes, the person who saves your life doesn't wear a cape. They wear a faded apron and hand you a warm roti when no one else even sees you. A year later, a mural stood tall on a school wall, a young boy being served food by an older woman, her face glowing with kindness. Below it read, "She fed a boy who became a man who fed a nation." The Shanta Foundation, for those who fed us first. Because sometimes, a full stomach is more than just food. It's love, it's survival, it's the first sign that someone, somewhere, believes in you.